Rockstar Games has spent over $300 million alone on master
testing water physics in GTA 6.
That much money on what? Alright, we all heard the news that Rockstar has spent $300 million on water alone. So let's use the leaks and the trailers to see what we will have in GTA 6. Let's go. First off, the strongest piece of evidence comes from a single shot in the Grass River's wetlands showing an old wooden pier at sunset. If you look closely at the vertical pylons holding up the dock, there's a dark saturated band of wood sitting well above the current waterline, roughly about a foot or higher. And no, this isn't just a texture for the wood, it's an actual dynamic wetness shader, something GTA 5 never had. Instead of having a permanent slimy texture baked onto the bottom of objects, the game is clearly tracking where water used to be and leaving behind high water marks as it recedes. This single detail alone implies that there is a real-time tide system because the game wouldn't need to remember previous water levels unless those levels were actually changing. And by the looks of it, they change a lot. Next up, there's something even more telling hidden in plain sight along the rural swamp roads and bridges. And a few screenshots and a wide shot angle from trailer 2, you can spot a black and white striped vertical poles with numbered markings running up from the ground. These aren't just decoration. In real world Florida, these are flood gauges used to tell drivers how deep the water is when roads are flooded. Rockstar is intentional with props like this, and they almost never add functional real world objects unless they plan to use them mechanically. Their presence does suggest that we will have local floodings, and after heavy storms, certain roads are likely going to fill with water, which obviously we will not be able to use. Low sports cars could stall or float, while SUVs, trucks and airboats suddenly become the smarter choice. Of course, this is most likely only going to be in story mode because in online this simply wouldn't work, but it's still a really cool feature to have. Another detail that caused confusion at first actually reinforces this idea even more. Fans noticed that the water around the Florida Keys style locations looked deep blue and choppy in trailer 1, but much lighter and milkier in trailer 2. So some people were worried that this was actually a downgrade, but it is the opposite. Trailer 1 is showing deep ocean with high energy waves where water absorbs light and appears darker. Trailer 2 focused more on shallower reefs where sand and limestone reflect light back through the water, creating that cloudy pale look you see in real tropical environments. This confirms that GTA 6's water isn't just a single flat color or a shader, it reacts to depth, terrain and sediment, meaning the engine is simulating light absorption and scattering based on what's underneath the surface. And yes, you can see the shift towards physical interaction even more clearly in the flamingo shot from trailer 1. When the birds take off from the marsh, the water doesn't just ripple outward in a flat circle like it would in older games. Instead, you see volumetric splashes where water is physically pulled upward by the flamingo's legs, forming thin strands of fluid before gravity drags them back down. This is not a canned animation. It points to a hybrid fluid system where localized physics fields exist around moving objects. The entire ocean isn't being simulated, which would be impossible performance-wise, but anything interacting with the surface is deforming a 3D water mesh in real time. This becomes even clearer during the storm sequence in trailer 1, specifically the highway shot under a massive concrete overpass. In the background, palm trees are partially submerged in what looks like a temporary lake forming beside the freeway. In Florida, highways are elevated, and heavy rainfall immediately fills the surrounding basins and drainage canals. The waterline on those trees is far too high for a static pond, which strongly suggests weather-driven flooding. The environment isn't just getting wet during storms, the actual water volume is increasing in low-lying areas, potentially hiding paths, altering routes, or revealing underwater secrets once the water recedes. The opening Vice Beach shot reinforces this idea in a more subtle way. At first glance, it looks like a crowd showcase, but the shoreline placement is the real clue. The distance between the wet sand and where NPCs have to set up their towels changes when you compare this shot to a later nighttime footage of the same beach. Permanent structures like volleyball courts and lifeguard towers stay fixed, but the shoreline moves. Even more interesting is how the sand behaves. Instead of switching instantly from wet to dry, the beach uses a saturation map. You can see darker reflective sand that's no longer underwater but hasn't dried up yet. This is another example of the receding tide in action, with the game tracking where the water was and letting the environment dry over time. Right in front of you, you can see an example of breaking down the shoreline into layers. This shows the different textures of how damp the sand actually is. Storm shots on highways reveal another massive upgrade. In one scene featuring a yellow sports car driving through the heavy rain, water isn't spread out evenly across the road. It's pooling against the concrete barriers and collecting in low spots where drainage appears to be overwhelmed. This is something called micro-flooding. something previous Rockstar games never simulated. Rain used to have a screen effect paired with shiny textures. Now water has mass, accumulates based on geometry, and likely affects car traction. Underwater footage pushes this even further. In the scuba diving screenshot near the coral reef, you can see total internal reflection on the underside of the water's surface. From below, waves act like mirrors, reflecting the seabed back down. This means water is treated as a physical boundary, not just transparent overlay. Lighting, visibility, and distortion are all affected by water depth and surface motion. If flooding raises water levels in urban areas or sinkholes, underwater visibility would naturally change, especially if storms kick up the sediment. Boat physics might be the most underrated part of this all. In shots around the boats club, different vessels sit at noticeably different depths in the water. Heavier boats have deeper drafts, and the waterline on their hose shifts with nearby wakes. This indicates true buoyancy calculations rather than preset animations. If water levels rise in canals or marinas, docked up boats will rise too. If they're tied improperly or not tied at all, it's not hard to imagine the rope snapping or docks dipping under the surface, which would be a completely new feature for the series. One of the most debated details ties all of this together: bridge height during storms. We have compared the shots of the Keys bridges across both trailers and noticed that there is a different depth in both images. These two images are the exact same shot. The pond in the second trailer is actually just below us in the first trailer. And noticeably the bridge in trailer 2 is higher than in trailer 1, showing that there is a different height in water in different times. Another thing we have missed in trailer 1 is in this scene in the store, there is bottles on the right hand side showing reflections. Now obviously this is something to do with the glass physics, but also the liquid inside of it is giving its own reflection. Now obviously 20 engineers have been hired by Rockstar Games to create the water and make it as realistic as possible, and the budget of this has been between $200 and $300 million. This resulted in a game that includes surfing, hurricanes and floods, as well as lots of boating activities such as fishing. And Rockstar has actually patented this system for fast fluid simulation, which allows for detailed splashes, droplets and puddles, which will be seen when characters exit the water. The water will realistically deform and splash around the person when they swim in the water, and the 2022 leak has shown this with Jason swimming in the Leonida Keys. Rockstar Games has been working on this water system for years now, and it does show. They have patterns that hint at smarter NPC and realistic water. For example, one of their patents is NPC navigation in water. So both swimmers and divers will avoid shallow areas and obstacles instead of crashing like in GTA 5. This pattern also handles fluid behavior like sweat, splashes and puddles, dripping off characters, and all reacting realistically to the environment. Trailer 2 already shows this with Jason's sweat moving naturally. These patterns don't guarantee features, but they do show that Rockstar cares about the smarter movement and more realistic water, which is a big upgrade from GTA 5's basic water physics. Alright, thank you guys for watching, have a nice day, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all of the above, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Adios amigos, adios.